Hey guys, I don't know about you. I know it's hitting you, Leo. When I hear this song, me siento como uno de esos gallos de pelea. One of those roosters ready to fight. Dude,
That's
I
right.
love this song. I mean, literally, my chest is popping out right now. What a man. I love that song. It's a beautiful song. Great song. But Leo, the show's all about you tonight. But before we get started with you, let's give a warm welcome, man, to everybody that's watching us. Our sister all the way from Riverside, Ceci. Once again, sister, thank you for being by our side. And we got all the way from Thailand, man, the legend, Batman himself, the legend from Pelican Bay, Jim DeJanis. Thank you, brother. I know it's early in the morning over there and you're watching us. Mil gracias. We got Big Joe. You're always with you, Ceci, and Jim. And there's a couple of others, Chris Kilby, Roger, and so forth. Thank you once again from Salinas. We got Big Roger Demshock. Like I always say, Roger, it's one of the legends with the San Diego Sheriff's Department gang unit. And we got our legendary San Diego police detective, gang detective, and also robbery detective, the legend, Christopher Kilby, watching us. And Big VJ, you're the one that's always watching us from Long Beach. Thank you once again, brother. And we got Cocaine Cowboys watching us all the way right now from the Philippines. Thank you, brother, once again for being by our side. Mil gracias. And Big Juarez saying, Mr. Leo, I bought your book, Reign of Terror. Excellent book. And awesome. With that said, Leo, I don't know how Bobby read that book in 24 hours. He must have been on crack. I'm serious. Bobby must have been on crack because it took Doug 2 days. It took me 3 days. But I'm telling you, you know what, man? That is one of the best books. I read a lot that I have ever read. I can't wait for a part 2, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. I love your writing style. I mean, you had my attention. I gave it to my wife. She read it in 2 days. And now my mother-in-law, 90-year-old, is reading it. So, hey, brother, you know what, man? Gracias. De veras. De todo corazón. But, brother, welcome once again. But, guys, before we get started, Doug, let's start off with you. What are you drinking tonight? And surprise us.
Well, we are drinking a Kentucky rye whiskey, Monk's Road.
Okay.
It's an old distillery. I guess I'm not really sure how it's done anymore, but there's a number. If you look at it, it says number 47. Mm-hmm. So on the registry of bourbon distilleries in Kentucky, it was the 47th one. So that goes way back. It's still family owned. It's right outside Bardstown, which is supposed to be like the bourbon capital of Kentucky. But it's really nice. It's really smooth. It's got a kind of a caramel and honey, maybe even a little molasses flavor to it. So it's not bitter, not harsh, really smooth and kind of on the sweet side.
Yeah, brother, I could see our team mascot right behind you trying to get in the picture. That's our team mascot right there.
That's Finn. He just turned a year old, so
did he? Okay.
He's still full of it.
So tell him to please jump on whatever he wants. He wants to throw in the bark. Hey, why not? You know? And Bobby, tell us what you're smoking, brother, and what surprise us. Every week you have something great to tell you you're drinking. Tell us.
The cigar is the Liga Privada number 9 from Judas Strait. It's a powerhouse. You've had it before. So it's a good cigar.
Good stuff.
So I had that, and no alcohol today. I've been having like a triple espresso. I put it in a coffee cup. So that's what I was probably drinking when I read Leo's book in 24 hours. Said un paseo dos.
Without a doubt. And Leo, I know you don't drink anymore, but I read your book. At one time you did. Are you drinking coffee or anything with us today? You done water or anything?
No, I've got some. It's a little nippy out here today, so I've got some hot chocolate from Mexico City with a Reign of Terror cup here.
Oh, nice.
So we could purchase that Reign of Terror cup. Do you sell it somewhere?
It is on edgeweaverbooks.com.
Oh, you know what? Before I'll put it up. So I want to buy one of those books without a doubt. I'll write it in so people that are watching can also buy it. And guys, I'm drinking. I told you guys I bought this at Costco that day that we were talking about the ghosts and so forth. My wife was watching the show. I lied about the price, but guys, this Yamato whiskey from China. I mean from Japan. I'm telling you, I've been drinking it at our show for the past 3 weeks. It is outstanding. And like I told you before, Doug, I'm not that guy that I always have it with three cubes of ice. Remember I talked about the CIA? And you know what? Ever since we've been on the show, this one right here, it'd be a disgrace to put three
there you go.
ice. You know what? Drinking it straight, it tastes good. And Leo, salud a usted, señor, for being on the show. Salud, señor. Salud.
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 And with that said, Bobby, it's all yours, brother. I can't wait to hear part 2. Vamos, Recio.
All right, for those of you who missed part 1, I highly recommend going back to part 1. And what we're going to do, we're going to be promoting not only Leo's career but Leo's book. And I enjoyed the book so much, I got 3 more copies for my son, daughter, and an extra one. And I think I'm going to read each one of them before I send it to him. So, one of the things about David, you know this, and even in the gang world, when you're a cop, we all know each other. You know, we have connections. I met Leo when I was in after retirement, and I ended up in Mexico, and he was towards the tail end of his time there. But he came highly recommended from people that I respect from DEA. So I was able to get the tail end of his career. But a lot of what I read in your book were stuff that I was reading when I was doing other deployments in Bosnia, in Iraq. And I remember eating my heart out because when I read your book, I told you, I said, damn, you sit there and I wish I could have cloned myself and be a cop and also not done the DEA overseas work. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a real quick intro on Leo. Leo was a DEA agent for, I believe you did what, 28 years?
28 years.
28 years. He did time in McAllen, Texas. He did time in Guadalajara. And he did a good stint in Monterrey is where I met him working out of the U.S. consulate. So here's a little intro on the Reign of Terror. Reign of Terror by Leo Silva is a gripping true crime memoir that takes readers deep inside the brutal world of Mexico's Los Zetas cartel. Former DEA Special Agent Leo Silva brings unparalleled insight, recounting his years on the front lines in the relentless fight against one of the world's most violent criminal organizations. This powerful narrative unveils the hidden realities of the drug war, from the complex relationships between the cartels and law enforcement to the personal sacrifices made by those who risk everything to protect others. With raw detail and authenticity, Silva sheds light on the lives of those entangled in a web of corruption, power, and violence. Reign of Terror is more than a recount of battles won and lost. It's a story of courage, resilience, and the cost of justice. And I absolutely agree. It's a must-read for fans of true crime and international intrigue. Leo, it's an honor to welcome you back for part 2. And like I said, it was, even though I was not there in Mexico at the time you were there, what the things that you go through, all the anxiety, and you suffer a lot of defeats when you have a lot of losses because of the inaction of the host government. And I felt your pain when I was reading it. Your last time here, we left off on a grenade attack that happened at the U.S. consulate, there at the old U.S. consulate in Monterrey, before we moved to the new one. Briefly go into that, and then we'll move forward.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the last podcast, one of the plaza bosses for the Zetas, El Canicón, decided, he and the leaders of the Zetas decided to take this action against the United States government and throw a couple of grenades. They launched a couple of grenades at the U.S. consulate. Fortunately, nobody was there, nobody got hurt, but they did damage, the front of the U.S. consulate, and it was an attack. It was a brazen attack on us, and it was meant to send a message, and we felt pretty much compelled to respond to that message. I mean, we couldn't just stay with our arms crossed and let them do what they want with us, like they did with the rest of the country, pretty much. The way they ruled not only Monterrey but all of Mexico is through fear, and and we weren't gonna stand for that, and we're gonna respond in our own way.
So Leo,
Yes,
can you
so go ahead.
Go ahead, Doug.
just so that our audience knows what's the significance of a consulate versus an embassy?
Okay, the embassy is where the capital of the country is located. For instance, Mexico City is the capital of Mexico.
Right.
So the United States Embassy is located in that capital city. And then there's satellite offices throughout the rest of the country, which are called U.S. consulates. And DEA and FBI and a lot of other agencies work in these U.S. consulates for U.S. citizens and for people trying to obtain visas to go visit the United States. And there's it's a huge function for the United States and for the host country.
Yeah.
So
what kind of security is there? I mean, we know what's at the embassies, but what's at the consulate offices?
Yes, in the United States Embassy, they have U.S. Marines for security, and they have also their internal security, right? At the U.S. consulate, I can only speak for Monterrey because I don't know what the other consulates do, but they have a contract with a security company. We did not. I mean, there's a security company that takes care of most of the consulates in Mexico, but we had actual state policemen from Nuevo León that were assigned to the consulate as security for us. So that was our security there at the U.S. consulate.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, so the response to the grenade attack, I remember there was a grenade attack, and then after the response to that, we had the attack on the killing, the murder of the two state policemen that were part of the security detail. That happened afterwards, right?
Yeah,
Or
that happened several
before?
Several
years afterwards. But that was
Yes.
That was in remembering that, it was a complete shock to us. I mean, we just, that came out of left field. We did not expect something like that to happen. These guys they had just dropped off the consul general at the airport. The consul was a very good guy, and it was a big weekend. I remember it vividly. It was a big weekend because the two rival soccer teams in Monterrey were going to play that weekend, and it's called the Clásico. And everybody the whole city gets excited to see the Clásico, and there's a big rivalry that's going on for years, and we were all excited at the consulate, all of us, and I remember arriving to work that morning and talking to Abrego, who was a big Tigres fan, and I am a Rayados fan, and we're like, hey man, the Rayados are gonna beat your Tigres, and just joking around, just poking fun at each other and our teams and everything, and that was it, and I didn't think much of it, and then 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the RSO comes running into the law enforcement area and says, 2 of our guys just got shot.
Ooh. And
no other details. I mean, he was white as a ghost. And we're like, well, who got shot? And all of a sudden, we're scrambling and trying to figure out what's going on. And it turns out it was Abrego and Zavala that were shot on their way home. Their plan was to go home and just have a little barbecue and prepare for the Clásico over the weekend, and it turns out that they got shot on their way home, and to this day we don't know who did it, but we're very, in law enforcement we all know that I know it was you, but I gotta prove it, and we just didn't have enough to prove it at the time. So, but we know it was the Zetas. We know it was them. We just couldn't prove it, and it didn't really matter to us because we were already going at it back and forth. And when this happened, it was just, I tried to capture the moment that most of us felt at the time in the book.
You did.
Yeah.
I don't know if I really could, man. But
you did.
It was one of the toughest times I've ever been through in my life.
Yeah. And then he had just bought a motorcycle, correct?
Yes,
He talked about that he was really happy and he was going to show you his motorcycle. Right. And then on the way back, that's when they were both, or when he was murdered. Yes.
Right. Yeah. They both were murdered. And, they actually happened to be neighbors. And that's why he was taking him home. So they lived in the same neighborhood.
Really? Wow.
So, it was just such a tragedy. And I remember instead of watching the Clásico, we ended up going to 2 funerals that day.
Yeah.
And it was just, I don't know. I couldn't describe the emotion, there was just an empty space, because it's like, how could this have happened? We're just shocked.
Shocked. And when we read the book, that was almost at the end of the book. Almost at the end of the book, when you mentioned that, because then you mentioned about how you weren't getting the cooperation from the state or the federales. I mean, they were just lagging on it, and you knew why, but they never caught the guys. But yeah, you definitely took us to that moment.
Sure, and it was another part of we went through a roller coaster of emotions, because first of all you feel this loss from these friends. I mean, Abreu and Zavala, they were bodyguards to the consul general, and we used to have functions, and I used to have functions at my house, and these guys would come over to my house, and the consul general's kids would go play in the park, and so did my kids, and Abreu and Zavala were the ones taking care of them. Yeah. And then afterwards they'd come back and we'd say, hey, well, you guys sit down and have something to eat, and take a load off here. And so these guys, they've been to my house. We had some good times together, and it was not only for us and the whole consulate. It was just really a really dark time for all of us down there.
Wow. And another thing that on that chapter, when you describe what happened, there's a misconception in the United States that all the Mexican cops are dirty, they're all under the take. But you know what? You do meet great guys like those. I mean, I had an opportunity, and I'm sure you did too, Bobby. I mean, we met some great guys. Alex Lares, the former chief of police of Tijuana. I mean, I could name like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 right now. But the way you described the relationship you had, and hopefully that people that are reading your book get rid of that misconception that everybody is dirty. You know what I mean? These 2 guys, I mean, you could tell that the consulate loved them. You know what I mean? You had them at your house. They were babysitting the kids. So there are good people, good cops that are really there to make Mexico safe again.
Absolutely. And those guys pretty much made the ultimate sacrifice, in doing their jobs. And what made it harder was the frustrations with the investigation afterwards, because not only that, but let me back up a little bit. I said we went to 2 funerals that day, and we did. And what me and some of my colleagues noticed immediately was a lack of presence of anyone from their agency. Nobody showed up, just us. It was just the American community. And I said, can you believe this, man? There's not even one guy here. Nothing. It was just their family and us. And it was just, it was bizarre, man. I was like, how is this happening? You have 2 cops, state cops killed in the line of duty, and nobody from their agency is here, man. That was
unbelievable.
It really was. I mean, it was eye-opening, man. It was like, what is going on here? So, and then later,
what are the things I noticed?
Later. Go
ahead, Bobby.
Well, let me jump in. One of the things I noticed is, especially in Mexico, a lot of the locals, they get killed. I mean, I went to a funeral early on when I got there, and I experienced the same thing. Showed up, and I was expecting there was going to be traffic to get there. It was such a small gathering, and I couldn't believe in the U.S. a cop gets killed. They're stopping the news. It's when Richard Foss was killed, the Attorney General Janet Reno came in to be at the funeral. We had the governor, everyone. And when I went to the very first funeral in Mexico, it was just like close family. That was it. No honor guard, nothing. I attended one right before I left, and that one was well attended. They had multiple agencies, so I don't know if they were starting to change but it's sad because these guys give their lives and they're gone and forgotten. It's just life in Mexico, I guess.
Before we go to the next, we have a question from Big Joe 67. Mr. Silva, thank you for your years of service. You are a true legend. How spread out were the Zetas in Mexico at that time?
They were spread out all over the country. I mean, their plan was to take over the entire country, all the ports, everything. So yeah, they were pretty spread out, and then they spread out into Central America. They went into Guatemala and Honduras, and they took over those areas so that they could cut out anyone making money from the shipments of cocaine. And they just cut them out. They went in there and just took over. It was pretty easy for them to do it.
And Tony, we'll come back to your question, but let's go ahead and go on. One of the grenades that you're describing, one of them did not explode, correct? And the other one did explode. Is that part, Leo? Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. One of them, I guess they got really nervous and forgot to pull the pin on one of them.
Yes, I remember reading that. Yeah.
So I guess he was kind of antsy and wanted to get rid of it as quick as possible. So, yeah, one of them did not explode.
So what was our response? I mean, from right there, the book takes off because now you're literally targeting everybody. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. So we responded. I think I mentioned in the last podcast that we hit Canicon's house, and there was a big shootout ensued, and there was a high pursuit from the house down through the main drag of Monterrey, which is Avenida Constitucion, where the old consulate used to be located. And when they passed by the old consulate in this high-speed chase, as they're passing by, they shoot at the consulate. They fire a couple of shots at the consulate with an automatic weapon, and we happen to be inside briefing our boss on what had just happened, and then this happens. And I think I told you all last time, we immediately responded and created a perimeter in the consulate, and I came pretty close to taking somebody's life there because he had his hands in his pockets and wouldn't take them out. So yeah, and there was just, it started right there. Everything started there. El Canicon started kidnapping soldiers from their base and killing them. He killed 9 soldiers, which is known as Octubre Negro down there in Monterrey. And that's when they pissed off Sedena, the Mexican army. So now you have Sedena and DEA. We're both now, they just rattled that nest, man, that hornet's nest. So, it was on after that. So Canicon goes into hiding because he's wanted by everybody, Sedena, DEA, everyone, federal police. So he goes to Saltillo. And in the meantime, we're conducting other operations in Monterrey. And I think I mentioned before, our strategy was to take it. We knew we couldn't take out the top leadership right away, but we wanted to take out the little plaza bosses in all the other towns that we had information on. So that was our strategy. Let's start taking out the lower end of the leadership structure, and eventually we'll make our way to the top. So that's what we started doing, and we were very successful at that time. So it caught their attention, and it got to a point where nobody from the Zetas wanted to be the plaza boss in Monterrey anymore because they were all getting taken out. So we definitely caught the attention of the leaders, who is Miguel Treviño and Heriberto Lascano at the time. And our ultimate goal was to capture them. That was our ultimate goal.
At that point of
So
the
who
book,
took? Go ahead, Bobby. Go ahead, Bobby.
at that point of the book, when I'm reading it, that would be like a part in a movie or some drama on TV where sadly it took the lives of the 9 soldiers, the 9 young, just guys leaving the base to go on their family leave or go do something.
Exactly. Right.
They got hit. That's the point where then was it the general or was it a colonel or who was it? I don't remember who it was.
There was a colonel that initially approached us, and then one of the generals that was he reported to came and was on board with us as well. So we united our assets
Yes.
and started going after these guys.
It was at that point in the book where I said it's on, and here things are going to start moving real fast. Shortly thereafter is when no one wanted to be the Plaza boss. It's like being the head of Hamas or Hezbollah, where they're getting blown up by the IDF every day, whatever their name. So it was the same kind of thing.
It was definitely
was there
like
any,
a hot potato, man.
Oh, definitely. David?
Did this happen? I can't remember if it happened before they burned down the casino. And the two women that you described, was that fictional or nonfiction? Because the way you describe them, I mean, you went all the way up to their death. I mean, you had me there. Was that fictional, those names, or did somebody tell you that story? And can you tell us the story, what happened there? And if you don't mind, yeah, that's very
absolutely. So this attack happened way before the Casino Royale.
Okay.
The consulate attack happened in 2008. The Casino Royale happened in 2011.
Okay.
So after the Casino Royale, it's like, okay, man, it's another tragedy, man. And me and one of my coworkers were sitting in, back in my drinking days, we're sitting in this restaurant bar, and we're just, again, we're like in shock. We're in shock, man. And it's like, what just happened? And then I was receiving calls from a lot of people who wanted answers that we didn't have. So what's going on, Leo? I mean, one of my family members is in there. Do you know anything? And it's like, well, no, man, I can't. So we used to use this restaurant as a base, if you will, So we were taking calls, and people were coming to see us. And I remember one guy coming and telling me that it was the day after the fire, the day after, and he was telling me that his aunt passed away in that fire with her best friend. And that's where I got the idea for that story, and I put that in there. The names are fictitious, and what I wrote about them is fictitious, but it's based on a true story. It's based on this guy losing his aunt with her best friend, and they would go every I think it was a Thursday or whatever, to the casino. That was their little routine, and they would go, and that's how I got the idea for that story. I mean, I didn't just want to say, well, these two ladies died in this fire. I wanted to build it up in a way that would kind of capture some emotion there for the readers.
And this was a new Plaza boss. Was it one of the three ugly brothers, the one that you described, Los Tres Feos? Tell us about those three feos.
those guys. We had already taken them out when this happened.
Oh, okay.
This was somebody new. This guy was called the guy that gave that order was called El Quemado.
El Quemado. Yes.
And that's another one that I tried to describe as best I could, and he's the one that gave the order for that to happen.
Yes.
So, and yes, they called him El Quemado because he got burned, I think 90% of his body. Mm-hmm. And he was pretty hard to look at. So he scared everybody that he spoke to, and I think I kind of captured that in the book, because
you did.
Everybody that I spoke to afterwards said, man, this guy was just he was evil. Yeah. And the only person that really could talk down to him or berate him in any way was El Cuarenta. Mm-hmm. So I mean, and I think I said this in the prior podcast. El Cuarenta had a good eye for recruiting evil people that are just like him. And I don't know where he finds these guys or what, but he was good at it. I got to give him that. You were talking about the three brothers,
yes,
the gorillas.
Los gorillas, that's what they were. Los gorillas.
Yeah. Yeah. So he had a talent for recruiting these evil guys, man. And I don't know where he found them, but he did, and he used them effectively in his organization. So, yeah.
There's casinos all over Mexico. You see them everywhere. But I know for us as U.S. government employees, they're off limits to us. And I've worked in other countries. I've always been, you stay away from the casinos. I lived in Colonia del Valle, and right down, I could walk. There was a casino. I was right there, right by my house. And the one Casino Royale was right up the street from La Nacional, the restaurant that we would have a lot of going away parties. Great food there. And I remember I would drive by. The Casino Royale was still there, just boarded up. So it's a deadly reminder. Every day, if you took that road, you would drive right by it every day.
I think it's still there, and I think they're trying to build something else, in its place. But it's been there for a long time. 66 people died in that fire. The owner, for some reason that I don't know, and nobody ever found out, had sealed shut the rear escape route. So a lot of people were trapped when that fire started. The fire started at the entrance to the casino. So a few people made it out initially when the fire first started, but once it started going, there was no way they were going to get out. So it was very tragic.
And then they locked the front doors with a chain, right? So the people couldn't get out the front doors. That was the only exit out of the place.
No. The front door it just exploded in a fire.
Oh, did it?
I think in the book, I don't know if I put a picture in there, but there's this. You see these two first responders running, and there's this huge fire, and that's the front of the casino.
Wow.
So what was locked was the back. They sealed it shut with concrete, so there's no way they were going to get out. So they were just trapped in there.
Gosh dang it.
Go ahead,
The
Doug.
surveillance video.
Go ahead, Bobby.
Go ahead. Real quick, the surveillance video, because that happened. I was in Iraq when that happened. And I remember later on, I'm not sure, somebody sent me, because I wasn't in Mexico yet. There was surveillance video where they were in a truck or Jeeps getting gas. And then you could see the surveillance cameras of them just running in with gas tanks and just throwing it. That's where the fire, right at the front door. And it just went up.
Right.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Doug?
Yeah, I'm just a little bit off topic and more of a kind of a technical question, but obviously Mexico uses their military differently than we do here in the States in regards to domestic issues. When they assisted you guys, do they also have like intelligence groups within the military that works specifically these criminal enterprises that assist with you guys, or are they more reactionary to what you guys are providing?
No, they have their own intelligence people too, and then we would meet with them pretty much once a week, sometimes even more, to share information. And the guys in their intelligence units were very knowledgeable. I mean, there were times that they actually gave us a big lecture on their security tactics and all that. I mean, these guys were good. They were very knowledgeable, and they had a lot of information on these guys. So, yes, they did, and we both worked together with the intelligence that we both had. So
I was just curious because I don't think most people up here in the States understand the role the military has in Mexico, how different it is than here it is in the States.
I tell you what, after the 9 soldiers were killed, and we met pretty frequently with their intelligence unit, the soldiers in charge of the intelligence gathering, those guys were very knowledgeable. I mean, wow, it was just incredible. We learned a lot from them, so
good.
Yeah.
So, Leo, we could say that after the soldiers, the dark day in October, the military all of a sudden says, hey, we're here. What do you need us for? But then when I read your book, after the casino fire, the community and the Mexican government, the president at the time, really basically said, do whatever you have to do to destroy these guys. Is that correct?
Well, at the time, Sedena had the Sedena team that we were using after the soldiers got killed. It happens, a lot. You do a good job and then you get promoted. So a lot of those guys on that team got promoted and got sent to different parts of the country. And the core team that we had was not there anymore. And the new guys that came in they weren't as committed to the cause as the other guys were. So So that's when we started looking for someone else, and we were lucky enough to find SEMAR.
Yes.
SEMAR, the Marines.
Marines.
And once we found them, man, it was on. It was on. And with the first operation we did was with El Gori, the gorilla guy, the ugly ones. Yeah. So that was the first operation we ever used in Mexico with SEMAR. And it was on them, on El Gori. And shortly after that operation, I get called from a colleague of mine in Mexico City. He says, "Hey, we got some really good intelligence on a high-level trafficker up here. Do you mind if we use that team?" And I said, "They're not my team. You guys can call them and use them if you want. They don't belong exclusively to me." So they called them. I put them in touch with each other, and they ended up getting Arturo Beltran Leiva the next week. So. And once that happened, I mean, these guys became the go-to team for not only DEA but U.S. law enforcement in Mexico.
Hey, Leo, can you share with us both arrests? Let's start off with Gori, because the way you described that one, and then how you met Sam. I think you were at that bar, that American bar where they sold wings, and somebody came up to you and goes, "Hey, have you heard of these guys? He was a retired DEA or something." And then you call them. And then you use them. Can you tell us about that arrest? Tell us how it happened with Gori?
Yeah, I sure will. And it wasn't at a bar in Mexico, but I had come home to the States for Thanksgiving, and a friend of mine called me up who had been in Monterrey a long time, and he was already out. He was working somewhere else, and he says, "Hey, I keep getting calls by these guys. There's the Navy, the Mexican Navy, Mexican Marines, and they kind of want to get involved in this." So, he told me what they did, and I was skeptical because nobody's ever used. I mean, my only dealings with the Navy when I was in Guadalajara was maritime operations, not, active operations on targets within the country. So I was skeptical. I won't lie, I was skeptical. I said, "Man, I don't know. These guys, they're not tested. We don't know. The only way we're going to find out is if we use them." So we said, let's try it. We don't have anybody else. Let's try it, man. The Army is not going to, they weren't going to do it. So they pretty much told us they weren't going to do it. So we said, well, let's try these guys. We got nothing to lose. Let's see what happens. And sure enough, man, they went in there, and when it was all said and done, I think there was something like 16 Zetas that were killed at that location, and 16 were placed under arrest. And again, it's kind of like a back and forth with us and them. Zetas never saw that coming, because nobody had ever used the Marines or the Navy there ever before. So now you have Miguel Terreno saying, "Who the hell are these guys?" We don't know who these guys are, and then they go and they get Arturo Beltran Leiva, and then they start they're on a roll, getting traffickers left and right, in Monterrey and Mexico City and in other parts of the country. And these guys are like, "Who are these guys, man?" They hadn't accounted for them. They knew the federal police were after them, Sedena and us and FBI, but the Navy just blindsided them, man, because they had no clue that these guys even conducted operations like that.
Hey, Leo, we call them Marines because I think that's what they call them. But can we say, because they're assigned to the Navy, can we say they're like our Navy SEALs?
It's yes, because they were trained. They were trained by Navy SEAls.
Navy SEAls, yes.
Yeah, I mean they have your regular SEMAR, and just like any other military, they have their special ops, the special ops guys, and the special ops guys. Not all of them, but their leaders were trained by Navy SEAls.
Yes.
So then the leaders come back and they train them. So that's how it works. So the special operations guys, those guys, I mean, there was nothing they couldn't do, man. I mean, those guys, they're special ops. They're gonna find a way to get it done, So it was an honor working for those guys, man. We would give them a target package, and within 24 hours, 48 hours at the most, they were in that door, So it was really refreshing to work with those guys, and they did not take any crap from anyone, man. So it was good to work with them.
Doug, did you have something?
No, I'm just giggling to myself about how they worked.
Or reading the book. Now,
It's crazy.
I know, Bobby, we have 1,000 things, but I just want to tell us a little bit about Arturo Beltran Leiva. I mean, I think Arturo Beltran Leiva, I mean, he was probably, I mean, those of you that are watching the show, equivalent to Chapo, Tamayo, I mean, he was up there, right? I mean, he was a very powerful individual. And then when they took him down in Cuernavaca, I actually went to the house when I was a PI working in Mexico. They took me to the house where it occurred. They arrest him, or they this big shootout, they kill him, and then that's probably the first time that the cartels retaliated by killing some of the Navy SEALs. We'll call them Navy SEALs, some of the Marines. Can you tell us about that, about the pictures that were plastered all over Mexico with the money and so forth?
Right. So they did the operation on Arturo Beltran Leiva, and Arturo Beltran was taken out. And unfortunately, I think one of the Marines was also taken out. And at the Marines' funeral, Beltran Leiva's crew went over there and they identified his mom. I guess it was the Marine's mom, his sister, some family members. I'm not sure exactly who. Mm-hmm. Well, they went to that house and they killed them all. The cartel did. They killed that Marine's family. And again, here they go. You know, they start messing with a hornet's nest. And you don't mess with the Navy or those guys, man, because they will never stop. Never. So once they did that, forget it, man. It was just a different ball game. Yeah. And you know, there's several examples that I can give you. We were having lunch with the admiral in Monterrey one time, and this is when the Gulf Cartel and the Zetas were fighting each other, and it was you know, battle zone. All of northern Mexico was pretty much a battle zone. And one thing he told me, he says, if something ever happens to one of our guys, I mean, we're a team. We're never going to stop until we get the guy who was responsible. And we're having that talk, and we're having lunch. You know, we're having cabrito. And an hour later, we get a call that admiral's nephew was killed by Tony Tormenta's guys in Matamoros, Tamaulipas. Oh. It's an hour after we had this talk. Mm-hmm. So Tony Tormenta, after that happened, didn't last a week. I mean, they went after him full force. I mean, it was a war. They turned Matamoros into a war zone, and they ended up getting him. I mean, they just weren't going to stop, you know. And I think some of these cartel guys, they didn't really, they underestimated the ability that these guys had, their desire, their motivation to complete the mission, whatever it was. I don't think they really took that seriously. And I think what caught their attention was this Tony Tormenta deal, because, you know, they killed the admiral's nephew, and then forget it, man. It was they weren't going to stop until Tormenta was either in custody or dead. You know, so that's an example of how they operate, and the brotherhood that they have within their organization. So.
During the capture or killing of Tony Tormenta, they tried to do what they did in Culiacan with Culiacanazo, where as a battle was going on, I remember reading news accounts that they were trying to send reinforcements to break them out. And some of the most intense fighting was fighting that group trying to come in and take them out. I remember watching the news accounts. And also another dynamic that you see in Mexico, a lot of the news, the local newspapers do not report on the cartel shit. They keep it really quiet or little bits and pieces. But I remember we went out, met with a source with the state police that I was working with, and they said every time the Marina would go out and jack somebody up, the newspapers would suddenly start reporting and highlighting community members who were against human rights violations to try and turn the community against the enforcement of the cartels for human rights violations. The masters of human rights violations, these cartels were the most brutal, forms of killing people. They had local media and community members trying to campaign against the enforcement actions against them, kind of like a psyops operations. And that was very prominent. You could see it by reading the local media.
Yeah, it's pretty much a counterinsurgency tactic that they use. First of all, they have a lot of journalists in their pocket, and a lot of these community members. So when it's time for them to use them, they say, "Hey, we're paying you all this money. Now it's time for you to launch this campaign against these guys."
So you'd have a protest. Yes, yes.
Right.
Used to see that quite a bit. And I remember we had the Marina, I believe you already had left. We had a meeting with at the CG's house. We had a meeting at the CG's house, and we met with the admiral, the almirante of the Marina group there. I don't remember his name. I think I have his number on my phone still. He's a little short dude, squared away, man. He looked like he came from a central casting of what a Navy SEAL Mexican leadership looked like. Sharp looking dude. And they were having some issues where of course, U.S. government in Mexico City starts wanting to know, is this true? Is this going on? And there was constant back and forth. But I think the community was behind. The real law-abiding community was fed up with the violence. And you guys literally had the foot on their throat up to the time that I left. But it's just crazy time. You were there at ground zero. You were there at the most dynamic time that you could be there.
Right. Yeah. And like I say, once we started working with SEMAR, the game changed a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I left out of the book. There's so many stories, and I had to kind of prioritize which stories I wanted to put in. But there's one that I regret not putting in. It was around the July 4th time in 2010, and there was a plaza boss at the time in Monterrey who went by the name El Zorro. So during that time, Hurricane Alex was coming into the city. Hurricane Alex caused a lot of destruction in Monterrey. I mean, it tore down roads and everything, and it was a terrible tragedy there. But in the middle of the hurricane, I was on vacation in the United States. I wasn't in Monterrey, but one of my colleagues was handling the operation for me, and he said, "I'm going to give him the information on this Zorro, because we have information that he's hiding out in some hotel and wait for the hurricane to pass over." And it was a hotel that we all knew, and I said, "Well, man, if they want to do it, fine. It's up to them." Well, in the middle of a driving hurricane, these guys got some inflatable canoes, and they went out and they rowed their way into the entrance of that hotel, and they got him in the middle of a hurricane, man. Wow. And I should have put the story in the book, but maybe I'll put it in the next one. But that was just incredible, because that hurricane, I mean, it tore down some of the main roads. Avenida Constitución was half gone, so it was crazy. A lot of buildings were damaged, and it was, when I got back to Monterrey after that hurricane, it was like a nuclear bomb hit, man. It was, the city was just in shambles, man. It was crazy. And these guys went out in the middle of that hurricane, and they got this guy. Nothing stops these guys, man. It's just, they're like, "Hey, he's there, let's go get him. The hurricane, so what? Let's go get him."
Hey, Leo, can you share with us the arrest of Trevino and Lascano? Who got arrested first, and tell us, it was the Marina that arrested him, right? Can you share with us on those arrests?
Sure. Well, first of all, Lascano was killed in a shootout with La Marina. Mm-hmm. He was actually playing a softball game with some of his buddies in Coahuila. We back up a little bit. We did an operation on Lascano with the federal police a couple of years before he got killed. And after that operation, he just became so paranoid that he kind of went into, hiding and became a recluse. And he didn't want to be seen because he was just nervous. He was paranoid. So pretty much he delegated everything to Miguel Trevino. Mm-hmm. And at the time, people were starting to doubt Trevino and think that maybe he's the one that put the finger on Lascano for that operation, and it caused some division. So you had some Lascano loyal members and some Trevino loyal members, and make a long story short, well, we got information that Lascano was maybe in this area. We didn't know that he was playing a softball game. We just had some random information that he might be in this town and in this certain area. Well, they were just cruising around, and it was a softball game, and they passed by the park, and they start shooting at the Marines. Well, they didn't know who was shooting at them or nothing, and they just responded. And after all the shooting was done and the smoke cleared, well, Lascano was shot dead. He was one of the victims there. He was one of the killed in action. And after that happened, the Zetas came in and they went to the funeral home where he had been, and they recovered his body, and nobody ever knew what happened to the body after that.
Wow.
But the thing is that the Marines, they took his fingerprints from the body before they came and took it, before the Zetas came and recovered it. So we were able to positively identify that it was Lascano that was dead. There was a lot of speculation that it wasn't him, that he faked his death and this and that, the typical conspiracy theories, but we were able to confirm it, and we knew that it was him. So, yeah.
And what about the C-40? Tell us about that arrest.
So when C-40 was arrested, the whole world is after him. I mean, not only the Mexican government, DEA, FBI, ICE, ATF, everybody's after him. You have Chapo Guzman after him. You got all these other cartels. The Gulf Cartel wants to get him, and even some of his own guys didn't trust him anymore. So I think the last chapter I named it "Nowhere to Run," because he had nowhere to run, man. He was sleeping in these ranches on the ground. Here he has all this money, all this power, and he can't even go to a hotel to sleep and have a good night's sleep because everybody's after him. And there's a reward on his head. There's a price on his head, and he knew it. So he would direct his guys, take me out in the middle of this ranch, and I'm going to just get a couple hours sleep out there. And to make a long story short, we were able to latch onto his phone that he was using. And when the people that we were using were tech experts, man. I mean, these are the U.S. Marshals, and those guys, yes, they're the best at that, So we kind of stepped aside after that, before this operation, because another one of our friends, really close friends, had gotten killed, and we were focused on that investigation, and we kind of put Trevino on the back burner, believe it or not, because this person was very close to us, and he was murdered. He's kidnapped and murdered, and we kind of let the marshals run with what they had. So here you got this guy that's running from everybody in the world, sleeping in the middle of nowhere, and the marshals were able to latch onto a signal coming from his phone in the middle of nowhere. And they had the Marines on standby, and they called him, and they sent out a Black Hawk to go track that signal, and they found it was just a pickup truck going down the middle of nowhere in this deserted road out in Nuevo León, and that Black Hawk just pulled right in front of that truck, just landed on the highway and pulled right in front of him, and this team comes out, and he tried to run, but he didn't get too far, so they got him. And he had in that truck, I believe it was $2 million cash. Wow. 2 or 3 million cash in some duffel bags. And he told them, "This is all yours if you let me go." He said, no, thanks, but no thanks. You're coming with us. And that's how they were able to get Trevino. But he pretty much ran out of options. He had no place to go. He didn't trust anybody anymore. And we had heard from our intelligence sources that he was tired of running. We knew he wasn't going to give himself up, but he was tired of running. We always thought that he was going to go down in this big shootout, this big firefight.
Right.
And it didn't happen. And you know, I think it's better that we got him in custody and he spends his time behind bars. And hopefully he'll get extradited to the United States sometime soon.
How about
Was he indicted? Well, he's definitely indicted in Mexico. Would they give him 100 years in Mexico while we bring him over to the United States?
You know, I don't think he's even been sentenced yet. He, in typical Trevino fashion, he started threatening all the judges assigned to his case, witnesses, and stuff like that. And nobody wanted to testify. The last I heard is that most of the charges against him had been dismissed, except for one. And they're holding him on that one. And one of the only reasons they're holding him is because we have an extradition order for him. So
I just hope the Caro Quintero story doesn't repeat itself with him, correct?
I really hope so. I hope it does not, because that would be terrible for Mexico, because this guy is just he doesn't belong. He doesn't belong in the free world, man. You know.
right?
So after his arrest, what happened to the Zetas?
Well, they started kind of fracturing. I told you there was a little bit of division between the different Zeta loyalty members, you know. So they started fracturing within each other, and now it's nothing compared to what they used to be. What they started out, you know, they started out being these special forces guys that deserted from the army, and now there's just regular gangbangers from the street, you know. So nothing compared to what they used to be. Now they're called El Cartel del Norte. You know, they're not called the Zetas anymore. It's Cartel del Norte, and then I think you have another fraction called Cartel Zetas Vieja Escuela, something like that. So there's different little factions of these guys. They just fractured completely, and they're not nowhere near as powerful as they used to be.
Doug, you had something?
No, I'm just.
Now, Leo, after, you know, they didn't diminish. Now you got Cartel del Norte. You have the other one, Viejo Zetas. Did we see them come to America? Did we ever see, Bobby, I think you might be able to answer that. Did we see cells throughout the United States of Zetas?
Yeah, they were involved in. I think weren't they pretty big, like in Atlanta, or where were they at there? Also, they were involved in the horse. When they were still powerful, they were involved in the thoroughbred horse
Racing.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, I read about that. Yes. Yeah. But that was when Zeta 40 was in power, right? But after that, did we ever see them in America?
If we did, I mean, I didn't hear about it, but
yeah, I never heard
probably
of it.
on a much smaller scale than what it used to be.
Yeah,
nothing compared to what it used to be.
Yeah, right before I left, Leo, I went to sat in with an intel meeting, and they were pretty much comparing Los Zetas. Now they're saying they're like barely getting by. They're like stealing gas, extortion.
Right.
They no longer have the big drug connections. They were moving mota still, where everybody else was already moving meth. And a final note on Arturo Beltran Leyva. The Beltran Leyvas, just, I think last week, 2 weeks ago, there was a seizure of fentanyl in Wasabe. Did you see that? It's like a ton and a half of fentanyl was seized. And Wasabe, that's Chapo Isidro territory. That was still the last part of that Beltran Leyva cell. And that was a massive amount of fentanyl they got there. And I think I just read some report in the Mexican newspaper saying that it was fingers are pointing towards Chapo Isidro's people, and Wasabe, that's Chapo Isidro's base there.
Right, you know, and it's part of, and that was part of our strategy. Knock out the leadership, and what happens? They're going to fracture, and now they're pretty much powerless. You know, so I mean, there's nothing compared to what they used to be, and I think that it has a lot to do with the strategy that we undertook on them. So.
Leo, we have a question from Tony Gems. He asked it earlier, but I think right now is a perfect time to ask. Any information on Osiel Cardenas and his recent release? How did this happen?
Yes, well, you know, Osiel, I haven't heard whether he's been extradited sent to Mexico or deported to Mexico or not, I don't know. It is my opinion that Osiel should be serving a life sentence in prison here in the United States for
Without a doubt, yes.
Yeah. One of the things that, unfortunately, as a law enforcement that we see is a lot of these guys that do take plea bargains, well, they get a reduced sentence. Now, if a guy goes to trial and he loses and he gets convicted, well, you're going to get the max.
Right.
And that's what some of these other guys did. You know, you have the Juan Garcia Abregos, Chapo Guzman, and all these other people, Genaro Garcia Luna. They all went to trial and they lost. And when you lose to the U.S. government, you're going to get the max. And that's one of the differences that I see in the Osiel case. He took a plea bargain early. Is that the reason that he got the 20 years? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that plays an important part in that. So.
Leo, did he turn state evidence? Did he testify or did he debrief? Do you know?
I have no knowledge about that. You know, there's people that say that he did. I know that he gave up some properties to the U.S. government, some forfeiture money. I think at several $1 million, and some properties that he turned over to the U.S. government. So I think that if he did that, there had to have been some level of cooperation.
Yeah.
In there.
And Leo, because he's not a U.S. citizen and he didn't, negotiate his release for the American government as an informant, so he's a Mexican citizen. So he was deported back to Mexico. When they deport him back to Mexico, can they still file other criminal charges against him? Because I'm sure he's responsible for thousands of murders, correct?
Yes, that's correct. If he is deported into Mexico, I'm sure they're going to be waiting for him right there at the border and pick him up and charge him with some of the crimes that he committed in Mexico.
Because
Absolutely.
that's what happened to Güero Palma. When he
Exactly.
did his time here, as soon as he crossed the border, they were waiting for him, click, handcuffed him. And I believe
Right.
he's still doing time now for crimes that he committed in Mexico.
Yeah, that's correct. And you know what? I haven't heard anything about Osiel. So I don't know if he's still here or I'm pretty sure he is, because if he would have been sent back to Mexico, we would have heard about it already.
Yeah.
Well, Leo, man, I'll tell you, man, we're at 1 hour and 3 minutes and 58 seconds. It's literally, it was like a 5-minute show. It was like a 5-minute show, right, guys? Right, Bobby? I mean,
Yes,
oh,
I have one more question for
go
Leo.
ahead,
Sure.
brother. I was going to say, whatever you have, let's go 2
Okay.
hours.
This
I
one-
love
this
listening to Leo.
This is another one of my stupid technical questions.
All right, no
But-
problem.
Obviously you worked with both federal, state, and local law enforcement in Mexico and the military. Sounds like they pretty much had their shit together, on at least the teams you were working with. Who did you enjoy working with the most? Was it the law enforcement branch, or was it the military branch that really seemed to be on the ball and going out and helping you guys out?
We had fun with all of them.
Okay.
With all of those guys, and but I tell you what, I was really impressed with SEMAR. I can't say enough for those guys. But as far as working with the federal police, our vetted unit, and some of those guys, it was fun with all those guys.
That's awesome.
Like you say, there's always somebody that has the same goal as you do, and not all the policemen in Mexico are corrupt. So
Right.
we were fortunate to find some really good guys that we work with, and we had a lot of fun. And I think one of the questions last time was, how do you deal with all this stress from this job? Well, and that's how we do it. We hang out with these guys afterwards, barbecue or go to dinner or something, and we just relax a little. So it was fun. We made some good friends, some dear friends that I still stay in touch with. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
And Leo, before we get to Bobby, because I know Bobby has probably more questions, before we get to him, I follow you on X. And I follow you under Los Tres Chingones Boxing Podcast.
Okay.
And so you probably don't know who I am, but that's me following. That's what I'm asking you a question. You're probably going, ¿Qué chismoso quién es? But what I'm trying is, I see that you still have the pulse of Mexico. I mean, you're posting this arrest that Bobby just mentioned. You're posting, I mean, a lot of great stuff from Granillo, from different people that are giving you intel. How do you see, what's the pulse of Mexico now with DEA? Do they still have Mexican or Marine group that they can work with? Can they still do the things that you did when you were there? Our DEA in Mexico?
Well, when AMLO was president, the answer to that is no. No, he didn't want us working with them, and he told them that he didn't want them working with us. So, if it were up to AMLO, he would have kicked us out of the country and not had us there at all. You know. So now with the new president, Claudia Sheinbaum, it's kind of like a wait and see approach. I think it's cat and mouse. And now that Mr. Trump has been elected president, and he's made some statements already about what he wants to do and his plans for Mexico. It's kind of a cat and mouse approach, because all of a sudden now you start seeing SEMAR seizing loads in Guasave over there, and another load, in Sinaloa, and I think another one was seized in Manzanillo. So is it coincidence? You got Trump making these tough talking statements, and then all of a sudden you get these seizures, whereas we hadn't seen those before. Yeah. So, and now it's and not only that, but it's SEMAR, who AMLO had prohibited from working inland operations in Mexico. So, I think it's still wait and see. We're going to wait and see what happens when Mr. Trump takes office in January. It's going to be very interesting, and I'm very interested in seeing what kind of relationship DEA will have with the Mexican government over there.
Can you give us a prediction?
I think it's going to change. I think AMLO's policies are going to change. I think they have no choice, pretty much. If they want to, if they want to make a difference in the drug war, they have no choice. They have to take a tough stance against the traffickers, similar to what Felipe Calderon did.
Yeah.
Yes. Bobby, last words or questions?
No. Well, a follow up on there on Leo, the new guy that was just named new ambassador. That's going to be the ambassador there in Mexico. Is Ron? What's his name? Johnson. His name is Ron Johnson. He's a former CIA official, former Green Beret, and he has been doing some work, I think, in El Salvador or Guatemala, somewhere down there. So he's familiar with this migrant flow, and I think he's going to be a good guy. Leo, I don't have to tell you. You know some of the sad sacks we had in those positions there that thought our job was to spread LGBTQ policy instead of doing the real work. I had a neighbor that was, you knew my old neighbor, he was gay. And he said, I don't know why we're trying to push this. That is so far down the bottom of the totem pole. We have problems with this. And this new guy that they just named, I hope he'll be something positive, because, come on, we all have a connection to Mexico. We don't want to see Mexico fail. No. We have family, our roots come from there, many of us. And it's a beautiful country. And I've told people, Mexico could be a poor man's Spain. I've been all over places in Mexico, and it looks just like Spain to me. It's beautiful. Yeah. And people can't go there because of the violence and the corruption. And, maybe I live in a fantasy world, but got a lot of hopes that one day things can get corrected down there, at least to the point where people can travel down there again. But man, great show, Leo. And once again, strongly recommend the purchase and reading of this book. Here it is. And it's well worth. And it's, like I said, I just went and ordered some more for my son and daughter, and going to be sending them out. I've had people ask if they could get an autographed copy, and one day, maybe one day, either you come out here again, like we met here before, or I'll go out there and I'll get a stack of them, get them autographed.
That sounds great.
Yes.
We're working on a way to streamline the process of getting some of these books autographed, because I've had a lot of requests, believe it or not. So yeah, we're working on a way to streamline it and make it easy for for the purchaser of the book to get an autographed copy.
So Leo, is there
Right on,
going to
right
be a part 2? Is there going to be a part 2? Tell us.
I'm already working on my next book, but it's not a sequel to this one. It is something totally different. It is about law enforcement work. It's about my time as a younger undercover agent here on the border.
Yeah.
And there's some really good stories in there that's coming up as well.
Awesome.
So I've been working on that pretty hard.
Do we have a target date and do we have a name?
We don't have a target date yet, and I'm still working on the name. So it's in that phase. I mean, I'm focusing on the stories, and then we'll figure out what the title's going to be. So, but there's some really good stories.
It's called a prequel, Wave. A prequel.
Prequel. That's right. That's right.
I'll tell you what, I'm having a lot of fun with this book because I'm remembering a lot of good friends. My mentor Mario Alvarez, who took me under his wing as an undercover agent, and man, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'll tell you that much.
Hey, brother, si un día llegas aquí a Tampa, I'm 20 miles south of Tampa, Apollo Beach, aquí tienes tu casa, we would be honored to offer you a home-cooked meal. Not as good as Monterrey, but you know what? My wife's a good cook, as you could see. Pero, hey, brother, mil gracias. Thank you once again. And you know what? We're looking forward to having you back again before you write your book, or even just to come up and just to talk to us. You know what I mean? It would be an honor to have you back with us again.
And I'm honored always to be on here. And muchas gracias a todos.
Thank you very much.
God bless you and Feliz Navidad. Prospero año nuevo. Right, God bless you. Thank you.
Take care, Leo.
Wow, guys, what a man. I mean, literally, it went by 7 minutes.
Right.
It went by 7 minutes. I mean, that's what that's what I enjoy so much about this show, that we get a chance, an opportunity. Thank you, Bobby, for bringing them on, to meet these legends, you know what I mean? And hear their stories. I mean, what an honor for me. I mean, to meet them and talk to them.
He's such a storyteller. I mean, he's got his delivery. I mean, his book, if you haven't read his book, read his book. I mean, it is so well written, and it tells such a great story. But even the way he explains it in these short, hour-long interviews is just amazing. How he gets all that detail out there and the personal stuff in there. He's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic.
Bobby, could you imagine if you would have been? Because I read when he left, if you would have been working with him over there. We only
you
guys barely just missed each other, right?
No, we crossed about 8 months to a year, I'm guessing, because I went out drinking with Leo a few times.
Oh, so he was there when you were.
I knew some of his stomping grounds, but I was fairly new. I had just got there, and once he was gone, there's a rotation that happens. So when I first got there, I was a new guy from my office, DEA, marshals, ICE, and everything else. And after the rotation happened, by the time I left, I was a senior law enforcement guy on the ground, and some of those sources had been passed down to me, or I just developed my own sources. And it was kind of sad because once Leo left, there was some incidents that happened that the new DEA guys were new. They didn't have much. The RSO office should have a lot of people there, should be the ones locked down. And the RSO office, the new one, was they were not very good. So the CG was reaching out to my team for our contacts. But Leo was there at ground zero, man. I'm telling you, he was. If I could have been anything else, I would have loved to have been a DEA agent in Mexico at that time, because a lot of the accounts that were happening, I was already overseas working other jobs, but reading some of these. And just great memories. And like I said, it just sadly he was on his way out retiring shortly after I arrived.
Wow. Right here, 1925, San Diego SD. If you give me your name, I probably remember you, but he said, David, I was honored to get baptized by your father, Pastor Contreras.
Awesome.
Wow, that's beautiful.
That's
beautiful. Hey, guys, listen, next week on the gray line, the story behind the blue line. I don't know if you guys got a chance, Bobby and Doug. I know, Doug, you did. I don't know, Bobby, if you saw the legendary live story of Calexico former chief of police Gonzalo Chalo Gerardo last night. Oh man, what a great story. I mean, that's another one. It was an hour show. It went by like 5 minutes. But next week, he's going to be talking about two of his main cases. One involves the Mexican mafia, which is an outstanding, I believe it was a RICO case, and the other one regarding a killer doctor. It's going to be an outstanding story. And then next week, before we take a 2 weeks off because of the holidays, guys, this one I'm looking forward to Chalos, but this one right here, this guy right here, Andy Mills, the guy is a chief of police right now in Palm Springs. Both Doug and I had the opportunity. You know, Bobby, he's that guy that I was going to say 20 years from now, but you know what? Over the holidays, my grandchildren, we were sitting by the fire. They asked me, Tata, tell me a story of one of your best friends, one of the legends. And I started telling them the stories about this man right here, Andy Mills. Next week, guys, we're going to go into Mexico. We're going to go into the Mexican military. I'm going to show pictures. We're going to go into a Mexican prison, and I'm going to show a video of us literally taking two high-level cartel guys, literally getting them out of their cell, putting them in the van, and taking them to the border. It's going to be next week. We're going to go on a wild ride, man. And I know, Doug, you had a chance to work with him as a sergeant, and I can't wait to hear your stories. So next week, we're going to be talking about him. And then during the month, when we come back, I am hoping he's going to join us live so he could contradict all the lies that I'm going to say about him next Wednesday. Oh, I love Andy Mills. One of my best friends. And guys, I have so much because I love this guy. Looking forward. It's going to be a great episode next week. Guys, with that said, Bobby, any last words, brother?
Last words. On a serious note here, with all the retirees, we have the Dillon's group that we have.
Yeah.
We lost 2 officers in about the last week. We're that age now. We're losing some of our legendary cops. So Sergeant Andy Hill looked, if you had a central casting of what a media relations officer should look like, it was him. He was an officer, but he had a background. He was from New York, a good-looking guy. He was an actor in New York for a while. He was an extra on a Saturday Night Live with Michelle Pfeiffer when nobody knew who she was, as an extra during a skit. Eventually, he moved to the U.S. I worked 2 wiretaps with him. Solid guy. He just passed away, early stages dementia. And also my old lieutenant, me and Saul Ayala worked the walking beat in the projects, night walking beat. He was a kick-ass lieutenant. And when I was working walking beat, he left to go take over the street crimes unit, which was a precinct level undercover unit. And when he left, he came to me and says, "Hey, Arce." I go, "Yes, sir." He goes, "First opening I have over at the street crimes unit, I'm bringing you over because I need borderline criminals over there." That's what he told me. So I said, okay. And when I went over there, and then I was making heroin buys, we were buying guns and property before I went to Narcs. And he's the one that opened that door, one of the guys that opened that door, and he just passed away 2 days ago. He was Saul Ayala's academy sergeant, also Saul's sergeant or lieutenant in street crimes and walking beat. So to Andy Hill and Lieutenant Greg Denny, here's to 2 great legends we just lost, and may they rest in peace.
Hey, Bobby, before we do that toast, we just lost somebody too, San Diego PD. We've lost a couple this week.
Yeah,
One of them that stands out, and Doug, feel free to jump in with another name, but Sergeant Greg Walton. This guy, another legend. This guy was one of my mentors when I came on the police department. I knew his wife, Ginger, very well. And I'm telling you, I just found out that he passed away 2 days ago. Another great legend. Anybody else, Doug, so we could toast to them?
Well, I was going to mention him also. His youngest sister, Cecily, was she was a cadet at the Marshals when I was there.
Really?
And that's how I met Sergeant Walton. Well, he was a detective then.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I think his father was the chief of probation.
Yes, he was.
Cecil
Yes.
Step. Yeah,
Sees the
so
snap. Yes.
long-standing law enforcement family, and he was kind of he was really a quiet guy.
Yes.
But he was
Good guy.
he was a good guy. But yeah, so
Really
it
good.
was. I did send notifications off to a lot of our marshal friends to let them know that he had passed recently. Yeah, but
And you know, his wife just passed away a year and a half ago, and then
Yeah.
his son, who was a UCLA graduate and played football at UCLA, passed away several months ago.
Yeah.
So
It's
now,
tragic.
Greg, yeah, tragic.
One last one.
Go ahead, brother.
One. And my first narcotics sergeant, Bill Hetty, his son was also a Phoenix police officer, passed away yesterday. So we have three.
Three.
We've lost three.
Salud.
So here's to them, our brothers in blue. Cheers.
Salud.
May the rest in peace.
Well, with that, I've got one thing.
Yes.
An academy mate of mine, Frank Bradley, and his daughter just graduated and is now a member of the Tucson Police Department. So she's carrying on. She's carrying on the law enforcement background also. And her mom was Julie Swindell with San Diego PD.
Oh, I remember Julie Sondell.
She was one of the first females that was on the border teams.
Yes.
Down on the canyon. So,
Wow.
so they sent some photos out about, I think it was 3 weeks ago. They had the big academy graduation, and there's mom and dad with their daughter, and she's now a Tucson police officer, a little bit east and south of you though, Bobby, but out in Arizona.
Yeah, we call Tucson's a big rival. Here is Arizona State, the Sun Devils.
Yes.
They're the Wildcats. We call them North Nogales.
North Nogales. So she's carrying on the family tradition out there in Tucson.
That's beautiful.
Good agency. Very good agency.
Hey guys, once again, Bobby, thank you very much. I mean, like I said, man, Leo, I can't wait for his next book. With that said, we'll see you next week. Remember, live a purpose-driven life and live every day like it's your last day on earth. Thank you. God bless you. Goodbye.
Good night.
Too many teardrops for one heart to be crying. Too many teardrops for one heart to carry on. You're way on top now since you left me. You're always laughing way down at me. But watch out now, I'm gonna get there. We'll be together for just a little while, and then I'm gonna put you way down here, and you'll start crying 96 tears. Cry, cry. And when the sun comes up, I'll be on top. You be right down there, looking up. And I might wave, come up here, but I don't see you waving now. I'm way down here, wondering how I'm gonna get you. But I know now, I'll just cry, cry, I'll just cry. Too many teardrops for one heart to be crying. Too many teardrops for one heart to carry on.